Can God take a healing back if you fall into sin? Well, it's not God that takes the healing back. It's not God that takes the healing back. It's the legal right of the demonic to come against your healing if you fall back into sin. So this is how it works. Jesus went to the pool of Bethesda. There's a man there who had been laying by the pool for over 30 years. And he was crippled. And Father God was intentional. Jesus had to step over a lot of other crippled people, a lot of other sick people, because Jesus only did what the Father told him to do. Jesus was intentional and went straight to that man and looked him in the eye and said, "Do you want to be healed?" And the man had a bunch of excuses. Well, nobody will help me in the pool. Nobody will do it. And then Jesus said to him again, "Do you want to be healed? Do you want your life to change? Do you really want your life to change? Do you want this? Do you really want it?" And the man said, "Yes." And so Jesus said, "Pick up your mat and walk." And the man was healed. So Jesus quickly went away and he went to the synagogue. Okay. And the man wanted to thank Jesus for his healing. And so the disciples helped the man find Jesus at the synagogue. And he went to the synagogue. He found Jesus in there and he said, "Thank you for healing me." And Jesus turned to him and said, "You can keep your healing if you go and sin no more. Do not sin or it will come back." Now, those are my words. Those are Jesus' words. But we got to go back to what Jesus originally said to that man. Do you want to be healed? Do you really want this? Do you want a better life? Pick up your mat, rise up and walk. Rise up, not just being healed from being crippled, but have a better life. I'm not just healing you from being crippled, I'm healing you from this miserable life. And then he warned the man, do not go back and sin, because if you do, it'll come back. Why? Because the devil will have a legal right from his sin to bring him right back to it. It is sin that gives the legal right of the devil and causes God to lift his hand. God doesn't take back a healing. It's sin that causes God to lift his hand, and the devil what? Has dominion over you again. He has legal rights over you again. It's all legal. Why do you think when Jesus died on the cross and he said, "It is finished," he was doing a legal transaction with his blood, taking all authority back from the devil, the keys to hell, grave, and right? So, if you backslide into sin and a sickness comes back, it's because you have the legal right of the demonic coming against you, and God had to lift his hand because you fell back into sin. But God, in his great mercy, he's calling you back out of it. You see, the prodigal son, he ended up in the pig pen. He ended up in the lowest of lows. And it says that he finally came to himself. He finally realized this life isn't so great. It's better with my father. And he came back home, and his father was what? Waiting for him with open arms. So if somebody gets healed, but backslides into sin, God has to lift his hand. The enemy has dominion on that person and is going to bring them into the worst of the worst misery. Because the devil doesn't want to give you an abundant life. Can the sickness come back on that person? Yes, because the devil has legal rights over you. Because of what? Your sin. God's had to lift his hand, but God is waiting for you to come to yourself and come back to him. It's a choice that we make. We all have free will. Jesus told that man at the pool of Bethesda, do you want to get well? Make the choice to have a better life and stick with it and do not sin. If you go back to sin, God will have to lift his hand, but you have that choice. But God is always waiting for you to come back. And you can get healed again, and it'll stick this time. You see, there are legal rights of the demonic. God can lift his hand because of sin. How many times has he done that to Israel? So your question is definitely biblical. But it's not God that takes the healing. If you fall back into sin, God will have to lift his hand. Right? And then the devil has dominion because of the sin and can bring back all the things that the devil does: sickness, disease, poverty, misery. But God is always waiting for you to come back to him with open arms. And if you got a praying mom, right? If someone that you know fell back into sin or backslid or went prodigal and they're miserable again, intercede for them. Pray for them. Because if you don't, who will? And that will accelerate them coming back to God. That will accelerate their healing again. And that they don't backslide again.